But let me ask you, Jeremy, I mean, this is something that's been around since Watergate. This is something that was put in place to say you can't have the fox guard in the hen house. So what's happening here?
Right. I mean, exactly. And there's a law, Chris, on the books that sets very specific parameters for how you can get rid of inspectors general if that's what you want to do. Congress has to be given certain notice, and you just can't do this the way that Trump has apparently done it. Now, we'll have to wait and see kind of what, if anything, Congress under Republican control decides to do about this. But as we know, this administration is not a huge fan of accountability. It views positions like inspectors general not as a form of keeping political figures in check and within the law. It views them as a form of political retaliation and retribution. And so I think you're going to have a really hard time convincing a Republican Congress that this in fact, is something that Trump has done that he shouldn't have done, because time and time again, with the senators like Mitt Romney gone and all the others who used to have, something of a spine, at least, in standing up to Trump when he went too far, those people are gone. And the people there who remain, who might be inclined to say, all right, let's just pause here and take a look at this, they're not going to speak up unless they think it's in their political interest. And right now, it certainly doesn't seem like standing up to President Trump is something like this Republican Party wants to do. Look no further than the confirmation of Pete Hegseth, the man that they knew, Republican senators, many of them at least, was completely unqualified to be defense secretary. And this is before all the allegations of sexual misconduct came out. So I'm not expecting a whole lot of resistance here from inside his own party.
Well, Brendan, let's talk about, again, this was a Watergate, at least the modern day inspector general. It was post-Watergate. The whole point is an independent check against mismanagement and abuse of power. So what is lost by not having someone truly independent there to do it?
Yeah, inspectors general are all about making sure you have good government. I mean, it's the basic oversight of your agencies. And look, these are not political actors. These are people who do really long, laborious investigations to make sure that programs are running the way that they should be, according to the law, but also, as you said, rooting out waste and fraud. I mean, that is one of the stated goals of this administration, obviously, with the DOJ and what Elon Musk is up to. You would think that you would want to have somebody looking under the hood at some of these agencies to see where they're not getting the job done. Look, I'll just say, there's not a real good reason to be firing a bunch of inspectors general unless you simply don't want anybody holding you accountable for things. And Jeremy used the right word, accountability. And this is a president who his time in politics has been marked by a lack of accountability. He was impeached twice, but acquitted both times. He got off on really all of his legal trouble. He's a person right now who thinks that nobody can check him. Why even have these positions? I'm sure he'll fill them with somebody who will nominally take the role, but does not want to be held in check, and frankly doesn't see any reason, his worldview, that these types of things should even exist.
So the question then becomes, who is Trump eyeing to fill these roles, right? Because the concern is that it'll be somebody who will rubber stamp. They'll have the title and supposedly independence, but they will rubber stamp whatever the president wants. So let's listen to what one member of Congress had to say about this.
If he's going to remove us, put in new folks who are willing to make those hard calls, even if it's, against, say, a Trump appointee, in the administration. If it's finding ethics misconduct, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's the key question. Is an incoming IG going to be willing to make that negative finding about a Trump appointee? That's the key issue here.
Even better than a member of Congress, because you can hear the concern in his voice, right? And I guess whoever gets these jobs next will indeed, the concern is, have trouble raising any real objections to anything that they may think Donald Trump wants. So what could realistically things look like if these nonpartisan guardrails are gone?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't expect these jobs to be filled very quickly. I don't think that this administration has much use for the mechanisms of government that hold it in check, that are there to make sure that there isn't abuse of power and waste and cronyism, political favors going on. I mean, that's just not something, an aspect of the government that Trump thinks is very necessary. And there's really not much there to hold him in check if he decides not to make that a part of his government, not to make honesty and accountability and efficiency, in a broad sense, kind of part of what he wants the federal government to be doing for people.
So in this case, Brendan, Lindsey Vonn was asked about this, and he said, well, yeah, it's not legal, but, and I'm going to quote him, just tell them that you need to follow the law next time. There are other areas, though, in which some Republicans are raising concerns, and one of those is, let me just find the note that I was looking for. Let's play this next set of sounds, which is a concern about Republicans breaking from Donald Trump over removing key security clearances. Take a listen.
Ultimately, these inspectors general serve at the pleasure of the president. He wants new people in there. He wants people who focused on getting out waste and fraud and abuse and reforming these agencies. He has a right to get in there who he wants.
I don't understand why one would fire individuals whose mission is to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. So this leaves a gap in what I know is a priority for President Trump. So I don't understand that.
I would encourage the president to revisit the decision for those people who are being targeted by Iran, as the president was targeted for assassination by Iran. As the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, I've reviewed the intelligence in the last few days. The threat to anyone involved in President Trump's strike on Qasem Soleimani is persistent. It's real. Iran is committed to vengeance against all of these people.
What Senator Cotton told me, the threats seem to be real against these individuals, and I don't want to leave them hanging.
So we had two separate sets of sound there. I'm going to blame Vaughn Hilliard because he's not here to defend himself, and so things got a little confused about which sound that we were throwing to. But the point is that security clearances have been revoked for some folks, Brendan, and you know how that works, and you know why that happens. I wonder what your thought is on that and what you just heard from those last two members of Congress.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of enthusiasm for the Trump administration right now, but it's all sort of fun and games until you put someone's life in danger, and that's clearly the situation here. John Bolton and others have been targeted by Iran, and we know that they have put out hits on them. And I'd love to know what the explanation is for why you think that is no longer a threat. Clearly, people in the intelligence space think it is still a threat. And while John Bolton may have said mean things to you, I don't think you want to be the one responsible if something terrible were to happen to him, particularly someone who has been the target himself, the president, the target himself of these threats from Iran and obviously others. This, I think, just reinforces that there's very little concern for humanity behind the politics of this president. If you're for me, I'm with you. If you're against me, I don't care what happens to you. It's the same concept played out with the January 6th prisoners that he released. If you're for me, I'm for you. And that's that just very self-centered worldview. And God forbid, I certainly hope that nothing happens to any of these people who've had their security taken away. But it should wake people up to how this president views the world.